the more I tried to be something I wasn't, the more anxiety I felt. The more anxiety I felt, the more depressed I felt, the more I retreated, and the less and less I did. And the more things that used to be okay caused me anxiety.
Are you walking through a storm that feels like it will never end? Do you wonder if life's storms have stolen the beauty from your life for good? You're in the right place. My name is Heather, and like you, I've been through a storm or two and wondered if life would ever be beautiful again. Here we share warriors' words, stories of discovering beauty after battles, and the worth in your wounds. Pick up your sword or boxing gloves and join the battle. Your words are powerful, my friends. Make them warrior words. Welcome, warriors. For decades, Allyssya Gossett struggled to believe she was worthy of taking up space in the world. She listened to society's rules for how she should be or feel. She made herself small to accommodate others and tried to put herself in a box just to fit in. Not embracing her true self led to years of debilitating anxiety and depression. Once she embraced who she is and how she was created, Allyssya learned to challenge those old beliefs. She stopped worrying about what others thought of her and stepped outside of her comfort zone to confidently live a life she created instead of one chosen for her. The self-acceptance journey fueled her passion for sharing her experiences and knowledge with others as a life coach, helping other highly sensitive women let go of self-doubt, find their voice, and live with internal peace and bold confidence. But before Allyssya shares her story with us, here is a review from TazBabe76. Wow, I can't believe how connected we are. A domestic violence relationship and breast cancer. Well, I am so glad that you found the podcast and that you have connected with mine and with others' stories. And I hope that you are free of that relationship and that you are recovering or have recovered from your cancer and your treatment. I hope you continue to listen. Would you like me to read your review on an upcoming episode? Go to Apple Podcasts and leave a review for the show. Who knows? I just might read yours next. And after you leave your review, come join us in the Warrior Words Facebook community at facebook.com/groups/warrior words. After you hit request, please answer the questions that pop up, and I look forward to getting to know you in there. So grab a tissue and join Allyssya and me as we share the story of how she went from putting herself in a box to breaking down the walls of that box to be who she was created to be. Let's rock. Hi, Allyssya. Welcome to the Warrior Words podcast.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. It is such an honor.
Well, I am glad that you're here with us. I think today's topic is something that a lot of listeners can relate to. And so I'm sure they clicked on the title and they know we're going to be discussing anxiety and depression today. And so I am just going to give you the floor, give you the mic, the proverbial mic here, and just if you could just share with us how you discovered that that's what was happening in your life.
I didn't know for a very long time. My very first memory of having suicidal thoughts, I was in 6th grade, and I had no clue where that was coming from, and that was the early 90s, and we didn't really talk about that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I just went through middle school and high school and knew that I was going to push feelings down and emotions down for a while. And then eventually I wasn't going to be able to push them down anymore. And they were going to come out in tears. And I was going to have this big crying fest with my mom. And then I was going to feel better for a while. And that's how it went.
Mm-hmm.
And that continued even into college. And college was when the depression was really, really hitting. And again, I didn't have the words. I remember one summer being home and I had been out doing something and I came back and my mom met me at the door and she was like, "What is wrong with you?" And I was just sobbing, "I don't know." Um, and it wasn't until I got married and I moved to a new state and the depression really, really hit when I finally got a diagnosis and the help started. Um, but even then, the help that I got wasn't exactly what I needed. And so for decades, honestly, I struggled. And it has only been in the last probably 8 to 10 years that I have really learned what I need to do to manage it and to really move from a place of simply existing in the world to really living.
I think that's a huge distinction because I I think we walk through life and we look at everybody around us and even social media highlights this so much is this we only see a portion of somebody's life. I think one of my recent guests had said something about how everything on the outside was the perfect picture. And
Yes.
you just don't know what somebody's really doing and if they're really living or if what they're portraying is real.
Yes. The number of people who were in my inner circle said I had no idea when I finally started talking about it publicly because I was very, very good at hiding it.
I think we do because you also mentioned that it started for you in the 90s where there wasn't as much of an emphasis on sharing this because mental health was not seen as the same at the same level as physical health.
Yes, yes. And for me, and every person's experience is unique. For me, my depression really comes from unmanaged anxiety. And so much of my anxiety came from trying to fit some sort of expectation that was placed on me societally, and that I'm a highly sensitive woman. And that being a highly sensitive woman presents in a way that doesn't necessarily align with what we celebrate in this country. And so that was really hard my whole life trying to contort myself just a little bit and a little bit and a little bit more to fit into some box that just wasn't right for me.
Yeah. And I thought that was when I read your bio, I thought that was such an apt description of just trying to fit yourself in this box. But you mentioned highly sensitive. So I want to ask you two questions about that. Are you familiar with the, oh gosh, I can't even remember what the name of the book is, but the author is Sherry Gregory, and she wrote a book on the highly sensitive person.
Yes.
And she had a co-writer whose name is escaping me right now, but I read that book and right when it first came out, and I said, that sounds a lot like me.
Yes, and there's a
This is
website, and I took the test, and I don't remember what the maximum score is, but we're going to pretend like it's 20. I scored like a 19. I mean, there was no doubt that I am a highly sensitive woman.
Can you, well, that was the second question. Can you maybe define a little bit for our listeners what a highly sensitive person is?
Sure. So typically, we tend to feel more emotions than maybe the rest of the population and feel those emotions more intensely. I will say a highly sensitive person, it makes up about 20% of the population. So there are a lot of us in the world. Um, we can also experience a good bit of anxiety, and we are expert people pleasers. We can get overstimulated, like all of our senses tend to be heightened and can be overstimulated pretty easily, which can make some social settings challenging, can make it hard sometimes to speak up in professional settings. So that's kind of a general overview of a highly sensitive person.
And you just described a lot of what happens in my life and my world. So I always say I hate confrontations of any sort, and I lump a lot of things in that word, the definition of the word confrontation, that most people would be like, that's not confrontational, that's conversational. But for me,
Correct.
but for me, it is more confrontational. So, well, thank you for that. And I will link Sherry's book in the description as well, because I think it really is a good introduction to the concept of a highly sensitive person.
Yes, it is fantastic, and it changed my world.
Maybe I should contact Sherry and see if I can get her to come on and share her experience with us as well. Um, but okay, so you said you found yourself trying to mold yourself or fit yourself into this box, based on the world's standards or society's standards. How did that then? Because I think of a box as constricting. How did that impact your life and how you participated in the world?
Um, I I didn't necessarily recognize it at the time, but looking back, I realized I am not sure that any goal that I had for a long time was something I really wanted or something that I had chosen because I thought that was what I should do or that somebody else planted the seed, perhaps, as that's a worthy goal. um, it really affected my marriage. I was married for ultimately almost 17 years, but we separated shortly after 15 years of marriage. And he is a big time extrovert and life of the party. And it definitely affected our marriage because I was trying so hard to be more like him, especially in social settings, that what ended up happening was I became less and less of myself and kind of just became a shell of a person in the process. And the more I tried to be something I wasn't, the more anxiety I felt, the more anxiety I felt, the more depressed I felt, the more I retreated, and less I did. And the more things that used to be okay caused me anxiety.
Okay.
Yeah, so it was like the more I retreated, the boundaries of what I could tolerate started shrinking in, and I could tolerate less and less. And so then it was a process of expanding those boundaries as I started to come out of that very dark place.
So how then, what was the impetus or the catalyst that, well, you said you sought help and you got help, but it wasn't the right kind of help, or it wasn't the help you needed at the time. So I guess what was the impetus in getting started, and then how did you actually find the right kind of help?
It was a lot of years. My depression got so bad that I was actually on disability for 6 years. And during that time, the help that I was given, I don't think that anyone had any malicious intent. I don't. I genuinely think that they were trying to help me. And one of the things was the medical professionals said that I probably just was not capable of having a full-time job again, and that when I might be able to return to work, it would probably have to be in a part-time capacity, and certainly something that was not going to tap into all of the education that I had had in my life and be intellectually stimulating for me. And I had a really hard time accepting that. And they would say that my resistance to that was causing me more distress. But there was a part of me that just could not accept that that was my reality. And I took some classes first before I tried working again. So that was a step in the right direction of getting out of the house and doing something that was intellectually stimulating for me. And in about that same time, my marriage was also falling apart. And again, I don't think that my ex-husband had any malicious intent. We've had conversations since our divorce. We're in a very good place. So I'm not going to say anything that he doesn't already know or hasn't already said, yes, you're right. He was such a good caregiver that he was sort of taking away my ability to care for myself. And we had developed this very codependent relationship. And when our marriage started falling apart, I could no longer rely on him for all of the things. And I had to start relying on myself again. And each day I just got a little bit stronger and a little bit stronger. And I was relying on myself a little bit more and started doing things outside my comfort zone. And the more I did that, the more I got comfortable with stepping outside my comfort zone. And it was just kind of a very natural progression, and a very slow, long progress.
Well, I mean, I think it's something, if it's something that takes you years to get to this dark, dark place, I don't think anybody can expect you or even themselves to get out of it that quickly either. It's going to take some time. It's going to
Yes.
take learning and the steps that you took, the one step at a time, you know. Um, and you said something there about your comfort zone. And I think that's something that it's kind of a buzzword. I think that, people hear, oh, got to take steps out of your comfort zone. You got to do this. But for you, that was a little more difficult. And one of the things that you wrote on my questionnaire, excuse me, was that stepping out of your comfort zone now is one of your favorite things to do.
It really is.
So how did that become one of your favorite things to do? And if you could give us an example of something that you have done.
Sure. I think it became one of my favorite things to do because it was part of the healing process. And I might get emotional as I'm telling this because every time I did it, I felt stronger. And I was retraining my brain to remember that inner strength that had been there all along, but I didn't think was there anymore. And so now my brain is trained that way. And each time I do something outside my comfort zone, I get a little bit stronger. I have some amazing experiences. And then I ask myself, okay, like, what can I try next? So one of my favorite things to talk about, stepping outside my comfort zone, is live music. I absolutely love live music. And when I went to my first solo concert, by myself. It was one of the most incredible, empowering experiences. And now I've lost count of how many concerts I've gone to by myself. And I started out in a very, very small venue that was just standing room only, and I think 400 people capacity. And now I've gone to like huge stadium shows by myself. And gosh, I just get a little bit emotional thinking about
Yeah.
it. It's just amazing.
I felt some chills there too. And I think it's just so music itself, it sounds like makes you feel alive and makes you feel more you. And then to be able to go outside of your home when you said that, even going outside was difficult at times. And now you have been able to step outside, literally, and step outside of your comfort zone and go to music, a concert, so that in what some way makes it like double. It's giving you life and living double. I don't know. That's just that's what popped into
Yes,
my mind there.
absolutely. Because when I was in that dark place, I rarely left the house. And if I did, it was very rarely by myself. Um, I needed someone else with me as like a security blanket, so to speak.
Yeah.
And I want to be clear that there was a lot of years in between um, the not being able to leave my house and jumping to being able to go to a concert by myself, and itty bitty steps outside my comfort zone, working up to that. But I remember when I set that as a goal for myself, it was I don't want to have to rely on other people to have experiences that I want to have. And I want to go to this concert, and right now I don't have anyone to go with me, and I'm going to go by myself. And that was a really amazing experience.
Wow. I remember the first time I went to a movie by myself. And, I thought, well, why would anybody want to go to the movies by themselves? And then when I finally did it, it's like, why was I worried about this? I can do this. I'm a big girl and I can go out and I can do things on my own, and it was enjoyable. It was fun. And
Yes.
so, I think that's an important point for our listeners in that I don't think it matters what the activity is. For you, it was live music. For me, it was going to a movie theater. And it can be anything. It can be going to the grocery store by yourself. It could be going out to your favorite restaurant. Anything that gives you joy and brings you life, then it's just so empowering to be able to do that and not have to. And I use have to, not have to have that security blanket there. It's certainly enjoyable when we do have, our spouse or our family member or our best friend by our side, but it's that have to. I
Yes.
think
And
that's
all
that.
of those activities that you mentioned were things that I did. Going to a movie by myself, going to the grocery store, going to a restaurant, all of those were things that I did leading up to being able to go to a concert by myself.
And yeah, and I like that too. The baby steps that, you get a little bit bigger each time, or you go a little further or something. Yeah, I think that's a good point. So then how then, because we talked a little bit about, you said nobody had any malicious intent. But the one thing that I think that struck to me when you said that was when they were telling you that you probably wouldn't go out and do a job that was fulfilling or satisfying or at the level of your educational training, and they thought that your resistance was what was causing the anxiety. And I was thinking, as you said that it was their prognosis that would increase that anxiety and or depression. Because then, yeah, you just don't, what do you have to look forward to if they're giving you this prognosis that you think, well, no, maybe I can. Who are you to tell me no or tell me that I can't? So then once you started realizing that this type of help wasn't what you needed and you started taking classes, how did you go from there? Did you find maybe another modality or another type of help that helped you with these baby steps to get you going to a concert by yourself?
I did. I started a different type of therapy, dialectical behavior therapy, and that really started to shift things for me. It has mindfulness as a thread that moves through all of the other components. Distress tolerance is another one of the components, and that one was really transformative for me. Right now, the other components are escaping my mind, which is not really helpful for the listeners, but I do highly recommend that modality for some. It was transformative for me. Learning how to slow my mind with mindfulness, yoga, and meditation. I finally learned what meditation actually was. I thought it was all of these people sitting around thinking about nothing for 20 minutes. And I was like, I can't do that. Um, so in the course of this shift, I took a yoga class and it was the right person saying the right thing at the right time. And I finally understood that meditation was not the absence of thought, but it was, in fact, when your mind drifts off to something other than what it is you're trying to focus on, whether it's your breath or your body or a mantra, that you catch it and bring it back. And so you are retraining your brain and slowing down your thoughts. And that was really, really helpful for me because when pretty much all the time, but especially when my anxiety was heightened, the thoughts were happening so rapidly that I didn't even know what thoughts I was having, let alone how not truthful some of the thoughts were.
I've heard a few people talk to me about having these thoughts, and they've termed them intrusive thoughts of, things that aren't true or things that they don't believe or don't want to believe. And, it can be very disturbing. And yeah, like you said, sometimes these thoughts they just come or they come too fast and you don't, you do have to retrain your brain. And I like that phrase because you had all of this, I guess, external training of who you were supposed to be or who society wanted you to be or well-meaning people wanted you to do. And you have to retrain to be what Allyssya wants to do and who Allyssya was created to be. And so, yes, I like that phrase of retraining your brain for that outcome. So, well, then let's move forward then, because I like to discuss the trauma story, and it gives us a really good, strong background. But I always say that we can't stay there, and you've given us really good evidence of not staying there. So, can you share with us what is life like today, and how are you thriving now?
Life is vastly different today. I have a full-time job using my education and training. In addition to that, I have a coaching business where I am using the experiences and things that I have learned to help other women. And I believe with every ounce of my being that that is the work that I was put on this earth to do. And it gives some meaning to everything that I have experienced and that I can sort of pay it forward. And my hope is that other women will not suffer as long as I did because I can share my experiences and tools with them.
That's beautiful. And I usually like to ask people about beauty that they can find in their trauma and throughout their battles. And you've shared some really good ones with us about the baby steps of going from that box that you put yourself in to the attending a concert on your own and enjoying it. And then the beauty also of being able to take your experiences and help other women on their journeys. And there's just not much more beautiful than that.
There really
So.
isn't, and it just lights me up.
Okay, well, I'm going to ask you two more things. One of them is, where can people find you? You mentioned you had a coaching business. How can somebody either work with you or find you?
I am on Instagram and on Facebook, Life Coach Allyssya on Instagram and Life Coaching with Allyssya on Facebook. And forthcoming very, very soon, I too will have a podcast, The Highly Sensitive Woman.
And as soon as that launches, please let me know, and we will get that link in the show notes, as well as get your socials in there for now. And then my last question for you is, I love it. I love to ask all guests if they would have any warrior words, um, words of advice or encouragement to our listeners that you can speak directly to them.
Yeah, you are not broken. The way that you were created is not wrong. It was actually divinely ordered. And you are worthy of taking up space in this world, and you do not belong in a box.
Amen to that. The perfect way to end our conversation. Thank you so much, Allyssya. I appreciate your time and your vulnerability in sharing this, and hopefully your words and your experiences will help someone who's listening to this episode. So thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Alyssa's description of putting herself in a box that kept getting more restrictive, was a perfect analogy. When we adopt society's or someone else's vision of what we are supposed to do or who we are supposed to be, we can feel like the walls are closing in on us, that we are in a box with shrinking sides. In our attempts to protect or shield ourselves from society or others, we also cause those walls, those sides to shrink even further. It's not until we find a way to open one of those sides that we can begin to retrain our brains to be more like they were intended to function by the one who created those brains and us. For Allyssya, she ended up doing the right thing. She got help. And she knew something wasn't right. But even though well-meaning, this help wasn't what she really needed. In fact, she was told she should just accept this new reality. She should accept that she would not be able to return to a world where she could help others in the way she was trained. After we turned off the recording, Allyssya shared with me, and I'm sharing with her permission, but she shared with me that all she'd ever wanted to do was help others. That was her life's goal. And then she had those experts telling her that that goal wasn't going to be likely anymore. Little did she know that God had other plans for her. God put that dream on her heart, that dream of helping others, for a reason. And He was going to make a way for that to happen. What Allyssya didn't know was that God was going to use her experience with anxiety and depression to help others in a definitive way. Now that she had experience with these mental health conditions, living with them, and more than one way of treating them, she could now help other women from a place of empathy. Allyssya knows what it's like to feel alone and broken and unworthy. And now she can support women in a way she could not have done before she lived through anxiety and depression. Her clients have a coach who's been there and understands. Is there something you've lived through, something that's given you experience and empathy, maybe to help someone else? Something to think about this week. Oh, and I know I've said this before on other episodes, but Alyssa's experience reinforces it, so it bears repeating. If you are struggling, please seek help. And if that help is not the kind of help you need, it's okay to seek another modality, another treatment approach, another therapist or coach. Now, we didn't mention it in the recording, but Allyssya has generously offered a free coaching consultation. So if you are struggling, please reach out to her via one of her links. She might just be the coach you need to get out of your box and start stepping out of your comfort zone. Until we meet again, armor up, fight the good fight, seek beauty, and make your words warrior words. God bless.